The day we decided to clean out Mom's attic changed everything. I never expected that sorting through dusty boxes would lead to the most devastating family crisis we've ever faced. But sometimes the truth has a way of finding you, even when it's been buried for decades. It started on a Saturday morning. My sister Sarah called me around 8 a.m., her voice carrying that familiar tone of reluctant responsibility. "Mark, we really need to deal with Mom's stuff. The house goes on the market next week." 3 months had passed since we lost Mom to cancer. The grief was still raw, but practical matters couldn't wait forever. The family home where we'd grown up, where she'd lived alone for 15 years after Dad passed, needed to be emptied and sold. Sarah and I met at the old Victorian house on Maple Street. The same house where we'd played hide and seek as kids, where Mom had bandaged our scraped knees, where Dad had taught us to ride bikes in the driveway. Now it felt hollow, filled with the ghosts of better times. "I'll take the basement," Sarah said, clearly hoping to avoid the emotional minefield of Mom's bedroom. "You handle the attic?" I nodded, though my stomach twisted at the thought. The attic had always been Mom's domain, a mysterious space we were rarely allowed to explore as children. "Don't go up there without me," she'd always said. "It's not safe for little ones." Climbing those narrow wooden stairs for the first time in 30 years felt like stepping into a time capsule. Dust particles danced in the afternoon sunlight, streaming through a small window. The air was thick and musty, heavy with decades of memories. Boxes were stacked everywhere, labeled in Mom's careful handwriting: Christmas decorations, 1985. Mark's school papers, Sarah's art projects. Each label was a small window into our past, a reminder of the woman who'd lovingly preserved every piece of our childhood. I started systematically, working through box after box. Old photo albums that made me smile, Dad's fishing gear that Mom couldn't bear to throw away, my high school trophies that seemed so important once upon a time. Each item told a story, but nothing prepared me for what I was about to find. In the far corner, partially hidden behind a stack of winter coats, sat a wooden box I'd never seen before. It was about the size of a shoebox but heavier, made of dark wood with brass corners. Unlike everything else, it bore no label. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled beneath layers of tissue paper, was a thick manila envelope. It was sealed with red wax, and across the front, in Mom's unmistakable handwriting, were the words: "For my children, when I'm no longer here to explain." My heart hammered against my ribs. Mom had been meticulous about leaving instructions for everything. Her will was detailed, her funeral arrangements pre-planned, even her jewelry had little notes about who should receive what. But she'd never mentioned this envelope. I called down to Sarah, my voice echoing in the empty house. "Sarah, you need to come up here now." Her footsteps on the stairs sounded urgent. "What's wrong? Did you hurt yourself?" When she reached the attic and saw me holding the envelope, her face went pale. We stared at each other, then at the mysterious package in my hands. "What do you think it is?" she whispered, as if speaking too loudly might make it disappear. "I don't know." But she wanted us to find it. Sarah moved closer, and I could see her hands shaking slightly. We'd been through so much together. Childhood adventures, teenage rebellions, adult responsibilities. We'd supported each other through Dad's death and Mom's illness. But something about this moment felt different. Final. "Should we open it now?" I asked. She nodded, though I could see the fear in her eyes. The same fear I felt coiling in my stomach. I carefully broke the wax seal, my fingers clumsy with nervousness. The envelope was thick, packed with documents. As I reached inside, I could feel multiple sheets of paper, some thick like cardstock, others thin like letters. But before I could pull anything out, Sarah grabbed my wrist. "Wait," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What if it's something we don't want to know?" I looked at her, really looked at her. My little sister, now 43 years old, with worry lines around her eyes and gray threading through her brown hair. We'd always been close, but the last few months had brought us even closer. As we navigated grief together. "We have to know," I said gently. "She left this for us for a reason." Sarah released my wrist and stepped back, wrapping her arms around herself. "Okay. But whatever it is, we face it together." I nodded and carefully pulled out the contents. The first thing I saw made my breath catch in my throat. It was a birth certificate, but not mine or Sarah's. The name on it was Jennifer Marie Thompson, born 3 years before Sarah. Our mother was listed as the mother, but the father's name was someone I'd never heard of. Sarah peered over my shoulder, and I heard her sharp intake of breath. "Who is Jennifer Marie Thompson?" My hands were shaking now as I set the birth certificate aside and looked at the next document. It was a death certificate for the same Jennifer Marie Thompson, dated just 2 months after her birth. Cause of death: SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. The attic seemed to spin around me. I sat down heavily on an old trunk, the documents scattered in my lap. Sarah sank down beside me, her face white as paper. "We had a sister," she whispered. "We had a sister, and she died, and Mom never told us." But there was more in the envelope. Letters in Mom's handwriting, addressed to Jennifer. Birthday cards she'd never been able to send. A tiny hospital bracelet. And at the bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, a small silver locket with Jennifer engraved on the front. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. All those years, Mom had carried this secret. This grief. This lost daughter that Sarah and I never knew existed. "Why didn't she tell us?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. I shook my head, unable to speak. The woman we thought we knew completely had hidden the most devastating experience of her life from us. The mother who'd seemed to tell us everything, who we'd thought had no secrets, had buried this pain so deep we never even suspected. Sarah was crying now, quiet sobs that shook her shoulders. I put my arm around her, but I felt like I was comforting a stranger. Everything I thought I knew about our family had just been rewritten. We sat there in the dusty attic, surrounded by the remnants of our childhood, holding the pieces of a puzzle we'd never known was missing. The silence stretched between us, heavy with questions that could never be answered. Finally, Sarah looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "What else is in there?" I realized I was still clutching several documents I hadn't looked at yet. My hands shook as I unfolded the next paper. It was a letter, dated just 6 months ago, in Mom's handwriting. "My dearest Mark and Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've found what I could never find the courage to tell you while I was alive." What had Mom been hiding from us all these years? And why was she finally ready to tell us now? The letter in Mom's handwriting was about to reveal everything. My hands trembled as I held the pages. Sarah pressed close beside me in the dusty attic. The afternoon light was fading, casting long shadows across the boxes and memories that surrounded us. But nothing could have prepared us for what Mom had written in her final confession. "My dearest Mark and Sarah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've found what I could never find the courage to tell you while I was alive. I've carried this secret for 46 years. And it has been both my greatest sorrow and my deepest shame. Jennifer was your sister, your older sister, and losing her broke something in me that never fully healed." Sarah's breath hitched beside me. I continued reading, my voice barely a whisper. "She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, the most beautiful baby I'd ever seen. For 2 months, she was the center of our universe. Your father was so proud he'd carry her around the house, showing her off to anyone who would listen. But I was terrified every single day. New mother anxiety, the doctors called it. I checked on her constantly, barely slept, convinced that something terrible would happen if I let my guard down for even a moment. The morning I found her, she looked so peaceful, like she was just sleeping. But she was cold. So cold. I screamed until the neighbors came running. The paramedics worked on her for 20 minutes, but it was too late. "SIDS," they said. "Sudden infant death syndrome." Nothing anyone could have done. But I knew better. I knew it was my fault. "No," Sarah whispered. "Mom, no." But I kept reading, compelled by a truth that was finally, devastatingly, coming to light. The guilt consumed me. Your father tried to help, tried to tell me it wasn't my fault, but I could see it in his eyes too. The questions, the doubt. Had I checked on her enough? Had I done something wrong? Had I somehow failed our perfect little girl? We couldn't stay in that house. Couldn't sleep in the room where she died. We sold everything and moved to Maple Street, and I made your father promise we would never speak of Jennifer again. I thought if we didn't talk about her, the pain would go away. It never did. 2 years later, I got pregnant with you, Mark. I was terrified the entire pregnancy. Convinced I would lose you too. When you were born healthy and strong, I thought maybe God was giving me a second chance. But I was different. I was damaged. I hovered over you constantly, checking your breathing every few minutes. Your father had to physically pull me away from your crib, sometimes just so I could eat or shower. When Sarah came along 3 years later, it was even worse. I barely slept for the first 2 years of her life. I was convinced that if I wasn't watching constantly, I would lose her too. You both thought I was just an overprotective mother. And I was. But not for the reasons you thought. I had to stop reading. Memories were flooding back. Mom's anxious hovering when we were children. Her panicked reactions to minor injuries, the way she would check on us multiple times every night. Long after we were old enough to sleep without fear. I remember, Sarah said quietly. I remember her waking me up. Sometimes in the middle of the night, just to make sure I was okay. I thought she was just being paranoid. She was protecting us the only way she knew how, I said. She was terrified of losing us too. I turned back to the letter, my heart breaking with every word. The worst part was lying to you both. When you asked why you didn't have any brothers or sisters, I would say that God had blessed us with just the two of you, and that was perfect. But every time I said it, I felt like I was erasing Jennifer from existence all over again. I kept her things in secret. The birth certificate, the hospital bracelet, the little dress I never got to see her wear again. I would take them out sometimes when you were at school, and I would remember what it felt like to hold her, to feed her, to believe that I was going to be the mother of 3 beautiful children. Your father begged me to tell you about her as you got older. He thought you had a right to know about your sister. But I was selfish. I was afraid that if you knew the truth about Jennifer, you would see me differently. You would know that I had failed as a mother once before. When your father died, I almost told you then. At the funeral, watching you both try to comfort me, I wanted to share the grief that had shaped our entire family. But I couldn't find the words. The cancer diagnosis finally gave me the courage to write this letter. Knowing that my time is limited made me realize that some truths are too important to take to the grave. Jennifer existed. She was real. She was loved. And she was your sister. In the envelope, you'll find everything I saved. Her birth certificate, her death certificate, the hospital bracelet she wore, photos from her 2 months with us, and letters I wrote to her over the years. Birthday wishes she never received, apologies she never heard. I need you to know that losing her didn't make me love you both any less. If anything, it made me cherish every moment with you even more. Every scraped knee I kissed, every nightmare I soothed, every milestone I celebrated. I did it all with the knowledge that these moments are precious and fragile and not guaranteed. But I also need you to know that the fear never left me. The terror that I might lose you too shaped every decision I made as your mother. If I was overprotective, if I worried too much, if I held on too tight, it was because I had already learned what it felt like to let go forever. I hope you can forgive me for keeping this secret. I hope you can understand why I couldn't find the courage to share this pain while I was alive. And I hope that knowing about Jennifer will help you understand your mother a little better. She was part of our family for such a short time, but she changed everything. In many ways, she made me the mother I became to both of you. Please don't be angry with me. Please don't think less of your father for keeping my secret. And please know that wherever I am now, I'm finally with her again. All my love, Mom. P.S. There's something else in the envelope. Something I could never bring myself to destroy, but something that might change how you think about everything else. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The letter ended there. But Sarah and I both stared at the final postscript with growing dread. Something else. Something that might change how we thought about everything. With shaking hands, I reached back into the envelope and pulled out a folded piece of paper that had been at the very bottom. It was different from the others. Older, yellowed with age, and written in handwriting that wasn't Mom's. I unfolded it carefully, and the words I saw there made my blood turn to ice. It was a note from Dad, dated just 3 days after Jennifer's death. I can't do this anymore. I can't watch her blame herself for something that wasn't her fault. The doctor said there was nothing anyone could have done, but she won't listen. She thinks she killed our baby. Maybe it's better this way. Maybe it's better if we never talk about Jennifer again, if we pretend this never happened. But I need someone to know the truth, in case something happens to both of us. The night Jennifer died, I heard her crying around 2 a.m. I got up to check on her, but when I got to the nursery, she was quiet again. I assumed she'd gone back to sleep. I went back to bed. I never told my wife that I heard Jennifer crying. I never told her that I chose to go back to sleep instead of checking on our daughter one more time. She thinks she failed Jennifer. But the truth is, we both did. If something had been wrong, if Jennifer had been in distress, Maybe those few extra minutes would have made a difference. Maybe if I had just walked into that room and looked at her one more time. My wife will never forgive herself. But she doesn't know that I will never forgive myself either. We're both living with the weight of a loss that might have been preventable. And we're both too broken to be honest about it. I pray that our future children never have to know this pain. I pray that we can build something good from these ashes. But I also know that this secret will define the rest of our lives. The paper slipped from my numb fingers and fluttered to the floor. Sarah and I stared at each other in stunned silence. The truth wasn't just that we'd had a sister who died. The truth was that both of our parents had been carrying crushing guilt about her death for their entire lives. Dad had heard Jennifer crying and chose not to check on her. Mom had blamed herself for not being vigilant enough. And neither of them ever knew that the other was suffering from the same devastating guilt. They were both in hell, Sarah whispered. All those years, they were both in hell, and they never talked about it. I nodded, unable to speak. The weight of this revelation was crushing. Our family hadn't just been built on love and care. It had been built on shared trauma that was never acknowledged, never processed, never healed. But there was still more in the envelope. What other secrets had our parents kept? And how many more revelations would shatter everything we thought we knew about our family? The final documents in the envelope would tear our family apart. As the sun set outside the attic window, Sarah and I sat surrounded by the debris of our shattered understanding. The birth certificate, the death certificate, Mom's confession, Dad's agonized note. Each revelation had been like a physical blow. But we weren't done yet. At the bottom of the envelope, I found 3 more items that would change everything: a bank statement, a legal document, and a photograph that made my hands shake so violently I nearly dropped it. "What now?" Sarah asked, her voice hoarse from crying. What else could there possibly be? I looked at the bank statement first. It was from a savings account I'd never heard of, opened in 1979, 3 years after Jennifer's death. The account was titled Jennifer Marie Thompson Memorial Fund, and the final balance, from just 6 months ago, showed $127,000. Mom had a secret savings account, I said, handing the statement to Sarah. Look at the deposits. Sarah's eyes widened as she scanned the monthly entries. She put money in here every single month for 43 years. Sometimes just $20, sometimes more. But every single month, without fail. She was saving for Jennifer, I realized. For the daughter who would never need college tuition or a wedding dress or a down payment on a house. The legal document was next, and it made my stomach drop to my shoes. It was a will, not Mom's official will that we'd already read, but an older version dated 5 years ago. According to this document, the entire Jennifer Marie Thompson Memorial Fund was to be donated to the local children's hospital in memory of our beloved first daughter. But that wasn't what made me feel sick. What made me feel sick was the handwritten note stapled to the will replaced. See new will dated 2022. JMT, fund now split between Mark and Sarah Thompson. Cannot bring myself to donate Jennifer's money. Let the children decide. She changed her mind, Sarah whispered. She was going to donate Jennifer's money to the hospital, but then she decided to give it to us instead. I nodded, but something felt wrong. Very wrong. Sarah, look at the dates. This will was changed just 2 years ago. But look at Mom's letter. She talks about Jennifer like she was a secret she could never share. So why would she suddenly decide to give us Jennifer's money? Sarah frowned, studying the documents more closely. Maybe she was planning to tell us about Jennifer while she was still alive? Maybe the money was supposed to be part of that conversation? But then I looked at the photograph, and everything became clear in the most horrible way possible. It was a picture of Mom, but not like any I'd ever seen. She was younger, probably in her early 50s. Standing outside a building I didn't recognize. She was holding a manila envelope, the same one we just opened. And she wasn't alone. Standing next to her was a woman I'd never seen before, but whose face made my blood turn to ice. She looked exactly like Sarah. Same eyes, same nose, same smile. They could have been twins. On the back of the photo, in Mom's handwriting with Jennifer's twin sister, Rachel, finally found her after 26 years of searching. She survived. Thank God, she survived. Sarah, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Look at this. She took the photograph, and I watched her face go through the same progression of emotions I just experienced. Confusion, recognition, horror. Jennifer had a twin sister, she breathed. And she looks exactly like me. No, I said, the pieces finally clicking together in my mind. Sarah, Jennifer didn't have a twin sister. You are Jennifer's twin sister. The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah stared at the photograph, then at me, then back at the photograph. That's impossible, she said finally. I'm your sister. I'm Mom and Dad's daughter. I was born 3 years after you. But even as she said it, I could see the doubt creeping into her eyes. And now that I was looking for it, I could see the resemblance between Sarah and the woman in the photograph was too perfect to be coincidental. With shaking hands, I went back through all the documents we'd found, looking for something I'd missed the first time. And there it was, on Jennifer's birth certificate. A small notation in the corner that I hadn't noticed before: Twin B, C separate certificate. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. Oh my God, Mark, I think you're right. But that would mean I couldn't finish the sentence. It was too impossible, too devastating. It would mean I'm not really your sister, Sarah said quietly. It would mean Mom and Dad lied about everything. My age, my birth, my entire existence. I was frantically searching through the remaining papers now, looking for anything that could explain this impossible revelation. And at the very bottom of the envelope, folded so small I'd almost missed it, was one final document. It was an adoption certificate. Sarah's adoption certificate, dated when she was 3 years old. The same age Mom and Dad had claimed she was when she was born. According to the certificate, Sarah's birth name was Rachel Marie Thompson. She had been placed in foster care immediately after birth when her twin sister Jennifer died, and her parents were deemed unfit to care for the surviving child due to severe psychological distress. Sarah had spent 3 years in the system before Mom and Dad had gotten themselves together enough to petition for her return. They'd changed her name from Rachel to Sarah, lied about her age to match their story, and built an entirely fictional narrative about her birth. They got me back, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. Jennifer died, but they fought to get me back. But why lie about it? I asked. Why not just tell the truth? Why create this elaborate fiction about you being born 3 years later? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying the adoption papers. Then she looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of understanding and devastation. Because they wanted to forget, she said. They wanted to pretend that the trauma never happened. They wanted to start over with a clean slate. So they erased Jennifer from history, and they erased the fact that I was her twin. They created a new story where I was just their second child, born 3 years after their first. But you lived with foster families for 3 years. You had a whole life before you came back to them. Don't you remember any of it? Sarah shook her head slowly. I've always had scattered memories from when I was really little. Faces I didn't recognize, places that didn't match our house. Mom always said they were just dreams or imagination. She said little children often have vivid fantasies that seem like memories. The magnitude of the deception was staggering. Our parents hadn't just hidden the death of one child. They'd hidden the fact that Sarah had been taken away from them, had lived with other families, had been legally removed from their care because they were too broken by grief to function as parents. And then, when they'd finally healed enough to get her back, they decided to rewrite history entirely. I was stolen from myself, Sarah said quietly. They stole 3 years of my real life and replaced it with a lie. I had foster parents who cared for me, maybe siblings in those families, experiences and relationships that were real. And they erased all of it. Sarah. No. She stood up abruptly, documents scattering around her feet. Don't Sarah me. That's not even my real name, is it? My name is Rachel. Rachel Marie Thompson. I'm Jennifer's twin sister, and I survived. And instead of celebrating that miracle, they buried it under lies. The anger in her voice was unlike anything I'd ever heard from her. My gentle, understanding sister was transforming before my eyes into someone I didn't recognize. They weren't just protecting themselves from the grief, she continued, pacing now in the small attic space. They were protecting you, their precious firstborn son who didn't need to be traumatized by the knowledge that he'd had not one but 2 sisters, one dead and one taken away because his parents were too messed up to take care of her. That's not fair, I said. I was just a baby when all this happened. I didn't make these decisions. No, but you benefited from them, didn't you? You got the intact family. You got the parents who had worked through their trauma. You got the normal childhood while I got 3 years of foster care that I can't even remember because everyone decided it was better to pretend it never happened. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Sarah, please. I'm not your enemy here. I'm just finding out about all of this too. Are you? She turned on me with blazing eyes. Are you really just finding out? Because I'm starting to wonder what else you might know that you've never told me. What are you talking about? I don't know anything else. Really? Because I'm wondering about college, Mark. I'm wondering about the trust fund that paid for your education. The one that Mom always said came from Dad's life insurance, but that Dad didn't actually die until we were both adults. My stomach clenched. The trust fund. I'd never questioned it. Never asked too many questions about where the money had come from. I'd just been grateful that college was paid for. I'm wondering about the down payment for your first house, Sarah continued. The gift that Mom and Dad gave you that they said came from their savings. But if they were putting money into Jennifer's memorial account every month, how did they have extra savings to give you $20,000? The pieces were clicking together in a way I didn't like. Sarah, you don't think? I think they spent Jennifer's money on you, she said flatly. I think the memorial fund we found today is what was left after they raided it to give their surviving son the best life possible. I think Jennifer's money paid for your education and your house, and probably a dozen other things over the years. You don't know that, don't I? She picked up the bank statements and started flipping through them. Look at the withdrawals, Mark. Large withdrawals that happen to coincide with major events in your life. College tuition, your wedding, the down payment on your house, your business loan. I looked at the statements she was showing me, and my heart sank. She was right. Every major financial milestone in my adult life corresponded to a large withdrawal from Jennifer's memorial fund. They didn't just lie to us about Jennifer and about my real identity, Sarah said, her voice deadly quiet now. They stole money that was supposed to honor our dead sister, and they gave it to you. They used Jennifer's memory to bankroll your American dream. The accusations were coming too fast, too heavy. I felt like I was drowning in the implications of everything we discovered. And the best part? Sarah continued. I got nothing. The daughter they gave away, the twin who survived, the child they recovered after 3 years of legal battles. I got nothing but lies and a fake identity. While you got Jennifer's money, I didn't even get Jennifer's memory. Sarah, please, we need to talk about this rationally. Rationally? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk rationally about the fact that our entire family was built on lies? About the fact that I'm not who I think I am? About the fact that you've been living off our dead sister's money for 20 years? I didn't know. But you do now. She looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, angry. So what are you going to do about it, Mark? Are you going to give it back? Are you going to sell your house and liquidate your business and return every penny of Jennifer's money? I stared at her, unable to speak. The house I lived in, the business I'd built, my children's college funds, so much of my adult life had been built on money I'd never questioned. Money that apparently belonged to the memory of a sister I'd never known existed. That's what I thought, Sarah said when I didn't answer. It's easy to be shocked and horrified by Mom and Dad's lies when they don't cost you anything. But when the truth threatens your comfortable life, suddenly it's complicated, isn't it? She started toward the stairs, documents still scattered around the attic floor. Where are you going? Away from here, she said without turning around. Away from you. I need time to process the fact that my entire life has been a lie. And I need time to decide what I'm going to do about it. Sarah, wait. My name is Rachel. She stopped at the top of the stairs and looked back at me one last time. My name is Rachel Marie Thompson, and I was Jennifer's twin sister, and I survived. That's the only truth I have left. And then she was gone, leaving me alone in the attic with the debris of our demolished family, wondering if we would ever be able to put the pieces back together again. The envelope had revealed secrets that went deeper than we could have imagined. But the most devastating truth of all was still waiting to be discovered. 3 days passed before Rachel called me. I'd spent those 3 days in a haze of shock and guilt, unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to think about anything except the devastating revelations in Mom's attic. The house felt different now, not like the home where I'd built my life, but like a monument to lies and stolen money. My wife Jennifer, it felt cruel that she shared our dead sister's name. Had tried to comfort me, but how could I explain that everything we'd built together might have been financed by blood money? How could I tell her that our children's secure future had been purchased with funds meant to honor a baby who died 46 years ago? When the phone rang at 11 p.m. on Tuesday, I almost didn't answer it. But I recognized Rachel's number, though I was still struggling to think of her by her real name. Mark? Her voice sounded hollow, distant. I need to see you tonight. Rachel, it's late. I found something else. The words sent ice through my veins. I've been going through Mom's things in her bedroom, and I found something that changes everything. Again. An hour later, we met at the house on Maple Street. Rachel looked like she'd aged years in the 3 days since our confrontation. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled like she'd been sleeping in them. "I'm sorry," she said before I could speak. "I'm sorry for attacking you like that. You didn't know about the money, and it wasn't fair to blame you for Mom and Dad's decisions." I wanted to hug her, but something in her posture warned me away. "What did you find?" She handed me a shoebox I recognized from Mom's bedroom closet. "More letters. But these aren't from Mom." I opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of envelopes, all addressed to Mrs. Helen Thompson in different handwriting. The return addresses showed they'd come from all over the country, spanning decades. "What are these?" "Letters from my foster families," Rachel said quietly. "All the families who took care of me during those 3 years. They were writing to Mom and Dad, trying to maintain some connection with me after the adoption was finalized." I pulled out one of the letters at random. It was dated 1982, from a woman named Margaret Walsh in Philadelphia. "Dear Helen, I hope this letter finds you and your family well. Rachel is doing wonderfully in kindergarten. She's such a bright, curious little girl, and she talks about her real mommy and daddy every day. She doesn't understand why she had to leave you, and frankly, neither do I. I know you were going through a difficult time after losing Jennifer, but Rachel never stopped loving you. She asks me constantly when she can come home." My hands shook as I read the letter. "She remembered you," I whispered. "Even after 3 years, she remembered you." Rachel's voice was carefully controlled. "Keep reading. They get worse." The next letter was from 1983, from a different family. "Helen, I'm writing to let you know that Rachel has started having nightmares again. She wakes up crying for her mommy and asking why you don't want her anymore. The counselor says this is normal for children who've experienced abandonment trauma, but it breaks my heart to see her in such pain. Are you sure you won't reconsider allowing supervised visits? Even a phone call would mean so much to her." I felt sick. While I was living safely at home with Mom and Dad, completely unaware that I'd ever had siblings, Rachel was in foster care believing that her parents had abandoned her. "There are 43 letters," Rachel said. "One from every family that took care of me. They all say the same thing, that I never stopped asking for my real parents, never stopped believing that someday you would come back for me." I continued reading through the letters, each one more heartbreaking than the last. Foster parents describing a little girl who would pack her few belongings every few months, convinced that today was the day her real parents would come to take her home. Social workers writing about Rachel's behavioral problems acting out in school, refusing to bond with new families, insisting that her name wasn't Sarah but something else that she couldn't quite remember. This one's from 1984, Rachel said, pulling out a letter with shaking hands. 6 months before they finally came to get me. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I'm sorry to inform you that Rachel has been hospitalized following what appears to be a complete emotional breakdown. She's been refusing to eat, won't speak to anyone, and keeps asking for Jennifer. When we ask her who Jennifer is, she says it's her sister who went to heaven, but that she doesn't understand why that means she can't go home too." The psychiatrist believes Rachel has been traumatized not just by the loss of her twin, but by what she perceives as her abandonment by her surviving family members. "We strongly urge you to reconsider your decision to wait until you're ready to reclaim custody. This child is suffering, and she needs her family now." "Oh God," I whispered. "Rachel, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "But that's not the worst part," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. "The worst part is what Mom wrote back." She handed me a carbon copy of a letter in Mom's handwriting. "Dear Mrs. Patterson, thank you for your concern about Rachel's well-being. However, my husband and I remain firm in our decision to wait until we are psychologically prepared to provide a stable home environment. We cannot risk bringing Rachel back into our family while we are still processing our grief over Jennifer's death. We believe it would be harmful to all involved, including our son Mark, who has finally begun to thrive after the traumatic period following his sister's death. We will reclaim custody when we feel the time is right, not before. Please continue to provide Rachel with the professional counseling she needs during this transition period. The letter was dated 3 months after the hospital report. 3 months during which a 5-year-old girl who'd already lost her twin sister was left to believe that her parents simply didn't want her anymore. They chose you, Rachel said simply. When they had to decide between protecting you from trauma and rescuing me from it, they chose you. I couldn't speak. The guilt was overwhelming, crushing. While I was thriving in the safety of our home, my twin sister was having psychological breakdowns because she couldn't understand why her family had abandoned her. There's more, Rachel continued. The letters from after they brought me home. These letters were different thank you notes from the various foster families, expressing relief that Rachel was finally reunited with her parents, but also concern about the adjustment period. One letter from Margaret Walsh, the first foster mother, stood out. Helen, I'm so glad Rachel is finally home with you. But I have to say, I'm concerned about some of the things she's told me about her new life. She says you've told her that her time in foster care was just a bad dream, and that she was never really away from you. She says you've changed her name and her birthday, and that she's not allowed to talk about her memories from before. I understand wanting to help her move forward, but erasing her past entirely seems unhealthy. These experiences shaped her, even the difficult ones. Pretending they didn't happen might cause more problems down the road. They didn't just change your name and age, I realized. They tried to erase your memories too. Rachel nodded. And when that didn't work completely, they convinced me that the memories I did have were fantasies, dreams, imagination. They gaslighted a traumatized child into doubting her own experiences. The cruelty of it was staggering. Not content with simply lying about Rachel's past, our parents had actively worked to make her doubt her own mind, her own memories, her own sense of reality. But why? I asked. Why go to such elaborate lengths? Why not just tell the truth? That you were Jennifer's twin, that losing her had temporarily made them unable to care for you, but that they'd fought to get you back? Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into the shoebox and pulled out one final letter. This one addressed to both Mom and Dad, from a lawyer. Because, she said, they didn't fight to get me back. I was never supposed to come home at all. The letter was from a legal aid attorney, dated 1984. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I'm writing to inform you that Rachel Marie Thompson's adoption by the Hendricks family has been finalized. As per your signed relinquishment of parental rights, you no longer have any legal claim to the child. The Hendricks family has requested that. I thank you for making this difficult decision, and they want you to know that Rachel will be loved and cared for in her new permanent home. They plan to tell her about her biological family when she's older, but for now, they feel it's best that she be allowed to bond with them without confusion about her past. Thank you for putting Rachel's needs first during this difficult time. My hands went numb. They gave you up for adoption. They signed away their rights to you permanently, Rachel confirmed. I was supposed to stay with the Hendricks family forever. I was supposed to grow up as their daughter, never knowing that I had biological parents who were still alive, still living just 2 hours away. Then how did you end up back with us? Rachel pulled out another document, this one a petition to reverse the adoption, filed just 2 months after it was finalized. The Hendricks family died in a car accident, she said flatly. My would-be adoptive parents were killed by a drunk driver. 8 weeks after the adoption was finalized, I was back in the system, and suddenly Mom and Dad decided they wanted me after all. The timing was chilling. Our parents hadn't fought to get Rachel back because they'd overcome their grief and realized they'd made a mistake. They'd fought to get her back because she was available again, and they felt guilty about letting her be adopted in the first place. I wasn't a redemption story, Rachel continued. I wasn't proof that they'd healed from their trauma and were ready to be parents again. I was their second choice, their consolation prize when their first choice didn't work out. I felt like I was going to be sick. Rachel, I don't think they saw it that way. Didn't they? She laughed bitterly. Mark, they signed papers giving me away forever. They were willing to let me disappear from their lives completely rather than deal with the reminder of what they'd lost. The only reason I'm here is because the universe intervened. The weight of this revelation was crushing. I'd always thought our parents had been overprotective because they'd learned how precious life was after losing Jennifer. But the truth was so much darker. They'd been overprotective of me because they'd already proven they were capable of abandoning a child when things got difficult. The Memorial Fund, I said suddenly. The money they saved for Jennifer all those years. Guilt money, Rachel finished. Payment for the daughter they gave away and the daughter they let die. Every monthly deposit was an apology they were too cowardly to make in person. We sat in silence for several minutes, absorbing the magnitude of what we'd learned. Our family wasn't just built on lies, it was built on abandonment, betrayal, and the kind of selfishness that puts adult comfort above a child's desperate need for love and security. What are we going to do? I asked finally. Rachel looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. What do you mean, we? I mean, we're still family, aren't we? Despite everything, despite all the lies and the pain and the awful choices they made, we're still brother and sister. Are we? She tilted her head, studying me like I was a stranger. You're Helen and Robert Thompson's son. I'm a foster kid who got shuffled back to them by accident. When her real adoptive family died. We don't share the same experiences, the same memories, the same relationship with our parents. What exactly makes us family? We grew up together. We shared a childhood. We shared your childhood, she corrected. The childhood they created for you. I was just playing a role in your story. The role of the devoted little sister, who didn't ask too many questions and didn't remember too much about her life before. The distance in her voice was terrifying. In the space of a few days, I'd not only lost my understanding of my family's history, I was losing my sister entirely. Rachel, please don't let their mistakes destroy what we have. We love each other. That's real, isn't it? That has to count for something. She was quiet for a long time, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I need you to understand something, Mark. For 37 years, I've been living a lie. My name, my age, my memories, my identity. All of it was manufactured to make your parents feel better about the choices they made. Every birthday I celebrated was fake. Every time I called them mom and dad, I was participating in a fiction designed to erase the trauma they caused. But that doesn't mean our relationship was fake, doesn't it? She looked at me with tears in her eyes. How can I trust anything about our relationship when it was built on such a fundamental deception? How do I know what's real and what's just part of the story they created? I wanted to argue, to convince her that our bond was genuine, despite the lies that surrounded it. But looking at her face, really looking at her for the first time with the knowledge of who she really was, I could see Jennifer's features in her expression. The sister I'd never known, reflected in the sister I was losing. I need time, Rachel said finally. I need time to figure out who I really am, separate from the identity they gave me. And I need time to decide whether I can forgive them. Whether I can forgive you. What did I do? You existed, she said simply. You were the child they kept, the child they protected, the child they prioritized. You were the reason they convinced themselves it was okay to give me away. Every time they looked at you thriving in your safe, stable home, they told themselves they'd made the right choice. The accusation was like a knife to the heart, especially because I couldn't argue with it. I had been the reason they felt justified in their decisions. My well-being had been their excuse for abandoning Rachel. I'm going to change my name back, she said, standing up and gathering the letters. Legally, officially. I'm going to reclaim my real birthday, my real identity. And I'm going to find my foster families. The ones who actually cared about me during the worst time of my life. And then what? And then I'll decide whether there's any place in my real life for the brother I thought I had. She walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at me one final time. There's something else you should know, she said. Something I figured out while reading all these letters. My heart clenched. What? Jennifer didn't die of SIDS. The words hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? The death certificate. The death certificate says SIDS because that's what they told the doctors. But look at the timeline, Mark. Look at the dates. She pulled out Jennifer's birth certificate and death certificate, laying them side by side. Jennifer died on March 15, 1978. The foster care removal happened on March 16, the very next day. If her death was natural, if it was really just SIDS, why would they remove me from the home immediately? I stared at the dates, my mind reeling. You think there was something else? Something they didn't report? I think Jennifer's death wasn't as natural as they claimed. I think something happened that night. Something that made the authorities decide that mom and dad were unfit to care for the surviving twin. And I think that's the real secret they've been hiding all these years. She headed for the door again, then stopped one last time. I'm going to find out what really happened to Jennifer, She said, "I'm going to find out what our parents did. That was so bad that I was removed from their care within 24 hours. And when I do, Mark, I think you're going to have to decide whether you can live with the truth about the people who raised you." And then she was gone, leaving me alone with the terrible certainty that our family's secrets ran even deeper than we discovered. Somewhere in the past, there was one final truth waiting to be uncovered. A truth that might destroy not just our understanding of our parents, but our ability to ever trust anyone again. The envelope from the attic had started it all. But Rachel was right about one thing: we hadn't reached the bottom yet. And when we finally did, I wasn't sure any of us would survive it.